I traded my future for designer bags and flashy promises. That's the regret that haunts me every day now, 10 years after moving to Accra with big dreams. My name is Nina, and if I could go back, I'd tell my younger self to choose wisely. I was born in Kumasi to Ashanti parents, but my parents didn't stay together for long. My family wasn't well off, in fact, we were poor. My father left us when I was young, leaving my mother to struggle alone. My mother did everything she could to give me a good life, even though we were poor. She was strong, hardworking, and hopeful that I'd make something better out of my life. But I got lost. My first boyfriend was my class teacher in junior high school. I was only 15 years and I knew it was wrong, but he gave me things my mother couldn't afford. He gave me pocket money and bought me little gifts. I liked the feeling. I felt special, like someone cared enough to give me a better life. I used to visit him in his house and he would make love to me. He was so good at giving me head and I instantly got hooked to heads. He normalized dating older men because he was caring and also very good in bed. I couldn't imagine dating a young man, not even a couple of years older. I always told my colleagues who were dating young men how much they are missing out. After junior high school, I decided to leave Kumasi. I wanted more than what my mother could give me, more than my junior high school teacher or boyfriend, more than what I had back in Kumasi. I heard Accra was full of opportunities, and I was determined to find mine. When I first arrived in Accra, I didn't know anybody. I stayed with a distant relative until I found a job in a company where I met Nick. Nick was 29, just 6 years older than me. He was a manager, and had a decent salary at the same company where I worked. Nick helped me settle in Accra, showing me the ropes, and soon enough, we became close. We started dating, and I moved in with him. Nick wasn't rich, but he was steady and honest. He was all I needed to launch myself in Accra. He was in love and he would express it in every way possible. But Nick didn't know I had a different side. I was only interested in older men and I had traveled to Accra to make it big, not to fall in love with a young man living on a modest salary. Accra we stay by plan, so I kept dating Nick and waited patiently for my time to blow. Meanwhile, Nick kept encouraging me in every way he could. He treated me with respect, and he genuinely wanted to see me succeed.
Why don't you go back to school, Nina? You're smart. You can make something of yourself.
Honestly, I don't want to go to school. I left Kumasi to Accra because my mother was forcing school on me.
What do you want to do with your life? You cannot do menial jobs for the rest of your life.
I will figure it out. I don't plan to stay in Ghana. I want to travel abroad and I am working on it.
Nick kept encouraging me to go back to school, but I declined it whenever he brought it up. I was not interested in enrolling in school. My plan was to find an older man who would tour the world with me, but Nick kept encouraging me to apply for nursing school, saying I could have a stable future if I got a degree. He said I could add value to myself if I graduated with a degree and I can attract better prospects to my life. This caught my attention and I took the bait. Eventually, he helped me apply and I got into a prestigious nursing training college in Accra. I could tell Nick was proud and cared so much about my future. He knew I liked nursing and was optimistic about our future together. Nick met my mother on a warm Saturday afternoon after I enrolled into nursing school. I had finally agreed to introduce him to my family, and though I felt a bit nervous, I was eager for my mother to meet the man who had been so kind and supportive. When we arrived, my mother greeted Nick warmly, studying him with a watchful look. She quickly recognized his sincerity and the respect he showed her daughter. As we sat down to talk, Nick shared his hopes for my future, mentioning his plans to support me through nursing school. My mother was deeply touched. She saw how much he genuinely cared and how he believed in her daughter's potential. For a moment, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, her daughter could finally have the stable life she had always dreamed of for her. In fact, the only reason I let Nick meet my mom was because my mom became increasingly worried about me. One evening, shortly after meeting my mom, As we sat together after dinner, Nick took my hand and said,
Nina, I want you to meet my parents. I think it's time.
His eyes were full of hope, and I could see he meant it. But I just shrugged, pulling my hand away. I didn't see the point. Meeting his parents felt like a step toward a future I wasn't sure I wanted. I was too busy thinking about all the things other men could give. Nick noticed my lack of interest, and his face fell, his dreams of a life together slowly fading as he realized I wasn't as committed as he was. It hurt him deeply, but I didn't care enough to notice. The truth is, Nick's salary, though decent, wasn't enough to satisfy my desires even as a nurse student. I wanted more than Nick could give me. While I was with him, I secretly started seeing older men. They had money, and they didn't hesitate to spoil me with it. They bought me expensive clothes, shoes, latest iPhone, and took me to places I could only dream of. I knew I was betraying Nick's trust, but the older men promised me the high life. And I was greedy for it. Nick noticed these changes about me and confronted me about it, but I denied it.
Nina, are you seeing other men?
What do you mean? Are you serious right now?
These men you're seeing, they're using you. I don't want you to end up hurt or regretful. Let's focus on the future we can build together.
These men you are seeing are nothing to me. They ask for my number, but I don't give it to them. I know what they want, and I am not that kind of person. You are just overthinking things.
I had become good at hiding the truth, and Nick, trusting me completely, fell for my lies. Whenever he asked about the older men who called me or sent me gifts, I would laugh it off, saying,
Oh, Nick, they're just friends. They like helping me out because they know I'm still struggling.
I knew the right words to say, and each time Nick seemed to believe me, though there was often a flash of doubt in his eyes. I'd reassure him with a smile and a quick kiss, making him feel silly for even questioning me. Nick wanted so badly to trust me that he ignored the signs, convincing himself that my friends were harmless. Little did he know, I was playing him, keeping him in the dark while I enjoyed the luxury other men provided. The truth is, I never imagined myself dating a younger male like Nick, and he wasn't good in bed, at least, not the way I wanted sex to feel. He was never interested in the idea of giving me a head. Sex was just painful with a younger male like Nick. The older men were gentle in bed and never hesitated to give me head. My heart was soaked in the hearts of older men. Nick couldn't win my heart after a year of staying. Now it was time to make a move. I was ready to move out of Nick's place. One of the older men got me an apartment at one of the expensive neighborhoods in Accra. One night, I broke the news to Nick about moving out. Nick was heartbroken. He has always had his suspicions and sometimes predicted how our relationship was going to crash down. I think it happened just the way he predicted it, and I knew he would be heartbroken, hurt beyond repairs to the extent that he could never love anyone again, but I didn't care. I thought I was moving up in life. To me, settling in an expensive apartment felt like success. I thought older men was a way to climb up. They promised me a lifestyle I could only dream of. I got used to the taste of luxury, to the attention and money. Nick tried to win me back a few times. He would come around and beg me to give him a chance, but I had made up my mind. His salary couldn't keep up with my lifestyle, so I left him behind. I moved out, thinking I would be happier with the older men who kept promising me the world. I thought having one rich man was enough, but soon, I wanted more. One man's money wasn't going to cover the lifestyle I dreamed of, so I started seeing more. First, there were 2, then 3, until I had 6 men, all older, all wealthy, each one giving me pieces of the high life I craved. But it still wasn't enough. There was one evening when I wanted a new designer bag I saw online. When I asked Mr. Kofi, my oldest friend, he told me I was getting too demanding and cut down the monthly allowance he used to give me. I was furious. Then there was Mr. Osei, who promised to buy me a gold necklace for my birthday but showed up with something smaller, saying he'd had a tough month. I couldn't believe it. I felt insulted. The worst was Mr. Owusu, who once took me to a high-end dinner but refused to give me the cash I'd asked for afterward. Each time, I was left feeling frustrated, thinking, if even 6 men can satisfy me, maybe I need someone richer, someone who can keep up with my needs. My thirst for luxury was growing, and no matter how much they gave, I always wanted more. Second year into my nursing school, things didn't go as I expected. I tried to keep up with my studies, but I started failing my papers. I was too distracted by the lifestyle I thought I needed. Eventually, I dropped out. I told myself it was fine, I didn't need school if I had men taking care of me. So I kept dating older men, using them as my source of survival. I became lazy, relying on them for everything. I couldn't even keep a job for long because I felt it wasn't necessary. Nick was still trying so hard to get me back, but I wasn't interested. He didn't understand that I'd moved on to a different life. He'd come over sometimes, unannounced, bringing my favorite food and talking about all the memories we'd shared. One time, he even showed up with a bouquet of flowers, the same kind he'd given me on our first date, hoping it would remind me of the way things used to be. Another time, he offered to help me with my nursing school fees and assignments, saying he'd do anything to see me succeed. But I didn't care. Little did he know that I had dropped out of school. All I could think about was the money and the luxury I'd grown used to, things Nick couldn't give me. His simple life felt like going back to rags, and I was too far gone. Nick's efforts only annoyed me, and I pushed him away. I told myself that he was the one who couldn't keep up with my needs, not realizing that I was leaving behind the only person who truly cared about me. Years passed, and those older men started drifting away one by one. The gifts slowed down, and the money wasn't as easy to come by. The life I had sacrificed so much for started to disappear, and suddenly I had nothing to show for all the choices I made. Now, 10 years later, I look back and feel nothing but regret. I realized that I lost a good man in Nick, a stable future, and my self-respect. I gave up everything for temporary pleasures that didn't last. To any young girl watching this, I beg you to learn from my mistakes. Don't chase after money by sacrificing your self-worth. You think you want the high life, but it's an empty dream. True happiness doesn't come from how many gifts you get or how much money someone gives you. It comes from building a life that's truly yours.